A struggling artist's painting of a sunset revealed a hidden map to a lost treasure, though Marcus Edwards had no idea as he stared at the canvas with hollow eyes, wondering how such beauty could flow from such emptiness. His cramped studio apartment smelled of turpentine and desperation, the late October chill seeping through poorly sealed windows as easily as doubt seeped through the cracks in his confidence. The canvas before him showed a sunset over an unfamiliar coastline, crimson and gold bleeding into indigo, with strange rock formations silhouetted against the dying light. It was perhaps his best work in months, yet it felt foreign to him, as if someone else's hands had guided the brush. Marcus hadn't painted from observation or reference. The scene had simply appeared in his dreams 3 nights in a row, demanding to be brought into existence. "Another masterpiece that won't sell," he muttered, running paint-stained fingers through his unkempt hair. At 32, the promising future once predicted by his professors seemed a cruel joke. His kitchen cabinets held 2 packets of ramen and a half-empty jar of instant coffee. The rent was 2 weeks overdue. His phone vibrated on the paint-splattered table. Marcus knew without looking that it would be his sister Elaine checking on him again. The same conversation they'd had a dozen times. Her gentle suggestion that maybe it was time to consider something more stable. His stubborn insistence that he just needed one break, one chance. He let it ring until silence returned, heavy and accusatory. Outside, rain began to fall, drumming against the windows in a melancholy rhythm that matched his heartbeat. Marcus covered the still-drying canvas with a cloth and collapsed onto his threadbare couch. Too tired to cry, too numb to rage against the universe. Sleep claimed him amid the storm, dreams once again filled with that strange, compelling coastline. Morning arrived with unexpected brightness. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits. Marcus blinked awake, momentarily disoriented by the quality of the light. His gaze fell on the covered canvas, and something pulled him toward it with an urgency he couldn't explain. He yanked away the cloth. In the clear morning light, the sunset painting revealed something he hadn't noticed before. Patterns in the rocks, angles and shadows that seemed deliberate, mathematical. The clouds above the horizon contained swirls that could almost be numbers. The reflection on the water below formed lines that weren't just artistic interpretation, but looked suspiciously like coordinates. "What the hell?" he whispered, leaning closer, breath catching as goosebumps rose on his arms. A knock at the door startled him so badly he nearly knocked over his easel. Marcus froze, wondering if it was his landlord come to demand payment. Another knock, firmer this time. "Coming," he called, quickly covering the canvas again. The woman standing in his hallway was a stranger, early 30s with intelligent eyes behind round glasses and dark curls escaping from a messy bun. She wore a jacket too light for the season, clutching a leather messenger bag against her side. "Marcus Edwards?" she asked, her voice unexpectedly warm. "Yes," wariness crept into his tone. "I'm Dr. Olivia Chen. I'm an art historian specializing in cryptographic imagery." She shifted slightly, seeming to sense his confusion. "May I come in?" "It's about your painting." "My painting?" His hand instinctively moved toward the covered canvas behind him. "How do you even know about my work?" A small smile touched her lips. "The gallery on 4th Street. You submitted 3 pieces last month for their Emerging Artists Showcase. They rejected all of them," Marcus said flatly. "The curator is a friend. She showed me your work. I was particularly interested in your use of geometric patterns and hidden structures." Olivia tilted her head. "May I please come in? I think you've created something far more significant than you realize." Curiosity overcame caution. Marcus stepped aside, acutely aware of the apartment's disheveled state as Olivia entered. Her gaze immediately found the covered canvas. "Is that your newest work?" Marcus nodded, heart suddenly racing. "I finished it last night. It's different from my usual style. May I?" she asked, already moving toward it. He found himself holding his breath as she carefully removed the cloth. Olivia went very still, her posture changing subtly as she leaned closer to examine the details. "Hi, sir, how did you choose this location?" she asked without looking away from the painting. "I didn't. I mean, it came to me in dreams. I've never actually been there, wherever it is." Now she turned to face him, her expression a mixture of disbelief and excitement. "You've never been to Black Rock Point on the Northern California coast?" Marcus shook his head. "I've barely left New York in the last decade." "And these patterns in the rock formations? The numerical sequences in the clouds?" Her finger hovered above the canvas, tracing invisible lines. "Did you consciously incorporate these?" "What numerical sequences?" Marcus moved closer, their shoulders nearly touching as they both studied the painting. I just painted what I saw in my dreams. Olivia opened her messenger bag and pulled out a slim laptop. Mr. Edwards, I believe you've unconsciously created a map. These aren't random artistic choices. They're navigational markers and coordinates. She typed rapidly, pulling up images that made his heart stutter. The screen showed photographs of a coastline identical to the one in his painting. This is real, he whispered. Very real. And potentially very important. Olivia's eyes met his, bright with barely contained excitement. Have you heard of the Aurora treasure? Marcus shook his head. In 1863, a ship called the Aurora sank off the California coast during a storm. It was carrying gold and artifacts from Spanish colonial settlements, worth millions by today's standards. Her voice quickened with enthusiasm. The wreck's location was lost, though there have been rumors for generations that a map exists, hidden in plain sight. In a painting, Marcus murmured, the implications slowly dawning on him. Not just any painting. Supposedly in a sunset painting created by someone who had never seen the actual location. Olivia's gaze was intense now. There's a whole folklore around it, that the map would reveal itself only to an artist pure of intention, but desperate of circumstance. Marcus laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Well, I've got the desperate part covered. The story goes that the original map was created by the ship's navigator, who survived the wreck but died shortly after. Before his death, he supposedly transferred the map's information into a painting that was later lost or destroyed. But he believed the knowledge would resurface when the right person needed it most. She gestured toward the canvas. Someone like you. This is insane, Marcus said, but he couldn't tear his eyes from the painting. Now that she'd pointed out the patterns, he could see them clearly. The mathematical precision hidden within what he'd thought were simply aesthetic choices. Possibly, Olivia conceded. But I've spent my career studying cryptographic elements in art. This isn't random, Mr. Edwards. These are navigational coordinates, tide markers, and depth indicators. So what are you suggesting? Marcus asked, though he already sensed the answer forming between them. I'm suggesting we go find it. The directness of her statement hung in the air. I have access to equipment, boats. I have colleagues who can help with the technical aspects. She hesitated. What I don't have is the complete map. It's only fully visible to the artist who created it. You mean me? Marcus said softly. Yes. The folklore says only the creator can see all the elements clearly. Others see fragments, enough to know it's there, but not enough to follow it accurately. Her expression softened. I know how this sounds, but I've been researching the Aurora treasure for years, and nothing has ever matched the descriptions as perfectly as your painting. Marcus looked around his shabby apartment, at the past due notices on his counter, at his dwindling supplies. Then back to the painting that had come from nowhere. The coastline he'd never seen yet rendered with perfect accuracy. If you're right, he said slowly, what happens if we find it? The legal details would be complex. The state would have claims, historical preservation societies too. But the finder's rights would be significant. Olivia's eyes were steady on his. At minimum, you'd never have to worry about rent again. The thought was so foreign, so unexpected, that Marcus almost laughed again. Instead, he found himself nodding, a decision forming before he'd fully processed it. When do we leave? He asked. How soon can you pack? 3 days later, Marcus stood on the deck of a research vessel called the Horizon, watching the California coastline emerge from the morning mist. The journey west had passed in a blur, Olivia arranging everything with an efficiency that left him breathless, introducing him to her small team. Kai, a marine archaeologist with an easy smile and steady hands. Elena, a dive specialist whose quiet competence immediately put Marcus at ease. And Jerome, the captain, whose weathered face suggested decades at sea. Marcus had brought little, some clothes, his basic painting supplies, and the sunset canvas carefully protected in a special case Olivia had provided. The original now hung in the ship's navigation room, where Kai and Olivia had spent hours comparing its details to charts and historical records. It's uncanny, Kai had said the previous evening, glancing between Marcus and the painting. The level of detail in places you've never seen. The positioning of landmarks that aren't on public maps. I still don't understand how, Marcus admitted, the question that had haunted him since Olivia's appearance at his door. Some things defy rational explanation. Elena had offered her first significant contribution to the conversation. My grandmother would say you were chosen by the story. The thought lingered with Marcus now as he watched the shoreline grow clearer, recognizing formations he'd painted without ever having witnessed them. A shiver ran through him that had nothing to do with the morning chill. "There it is," Olivia said suddenly beside him at the railing. Black Rock Point. The distinctive rock formation jutted from the coastline exactly as it appeared in his painting, a dark sentinel against the landscape. Seeing it in reality made Marcus's chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't name. "How are you feeling?" Olivia asked, studying his face. "Like I'm still dreaming," he answered honestly. Then with a small smile, "But at least it's a more interesting dream than my apartment." She laughed, the sound bright against the ocean breeze. "We'll make our first dive this afternoon. The coordinates from your painting suggest a location about half a mile offshore, in a deep channel between two underwater ridges. You really believe we'll find something?" "I do." Her certainty was unwavering. "The historical record aligns perfectly with what you've painted. The aurora went down during a sunset very much like the one in your work." Jerome called from the wheelhouse, and Olivia excused herself to confer with him and Kai. Marcus remained at the railing, watching the coast with strange familiarity. For the first time in years, he felt a flutter of something he'd nearly forgotten. Hope. The first dive yielded nothing but beautiful marine life and interesting geology. The second, the following morning, discovered a scattering of coal that Kai identified as consistent with the aurora's era. By the third day, even Olivia's enthusiasm showed signs of strain. "We're missing something," she said that evening as they gathered in the ship's small common area. The painting hung on the wall, its colors seeming to shift in the cabin's lighting. "The coordinates are right, but the tide," Marcus said suddenly, the realization striking him as he stared at the canvas. "Look at how the light hits the water in the painting. That's not just artistic effect, it's showing tide patterns." Kai leaned forward, intrigued. "What are you seeing?" Marcus approached the painting, his finger hovering over specific areas. "Here and here, the way the light breaks on the water. It's indicating an unusually low tide, exposing areas normally covered." Olivia quickly consulted tide charts on her tablet. "There's an extremely low tide tomorrow at sunset." She looked up at Marcus with renewed excitement. The timing would be poetic, wouldn't it? Finding a sunset shipwreck at sunset? The following day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Marcus found himself unable to sit still, alternating between pacing the deck and staring at his painting, finding new details he hadn't consciously included. The exact angle of light that would guide them to the right spot, subtle indicators of depth and current. As the sun began its descent, the team prepared for what might be their most promising dive. Elena and Kai would go down first, with Olivia monitoring from the boat alongside Jerome. Marcus insisted on joining them in the water. "I've never dived before," he admitted, "but I need to see this. I need to understand why this came to me." After a quick crash course in basic diving and an agreement that he would stay close to Elena at all times, Marcus found himself descending into the Pacific's cool depths. The sensation was otherworldly. Weightlessness combined with the rhythmic sound of his own breathing through the regulator. Elena guided him expertly as they followed Kai toward the coordinates indicated in the painting. The water grew darker as they descended, powerful lights cutting through the gloom. Then Kai's light caught something that wasn't rock or marine life, a glint of metal half buried in the seafloor. Even through the mask, Marcus could see Kai's eyes widen. The archaeologist signaled to Elena, who kept a steadying hand on Marcus's arm as they approached the discovery. It was the tip of what appeared to be a ship's figurehead, ornately carved and preserved by the cold Pacific waters. Kai carefully brushed away sediment, revealing a woman's face with eyes closed as if in sleep. The aurora, named for the goddess of dawn, had been found. The next hour passed in a blur of controlled excitement. They surfaced to share the news with Olivia and Jerome. Then Kai and Elena returned with proper documentation equipment, while Marcus remained on the boat, shaking with adrenaline and emotion. "You did it," Olivia said, her eyes shining as she gripped his shoulders. "You actually found it." "We found it," Marcus corrected. "I just painted the map." By nightfall, there was no doubt. They had located the aurora's final resting place, hidden for over 150 years in the deep channel, exactly where Marcus's painting had indicated. Initial surveys suggested the wreck was remarkably intact, preserved by the unique underwater geography that had kept it safe from both salvagers and the worst effects of ocean currents. That night, as the others excitedly discussed the archaeological significance and next steps, Marcus slipped away to the deck. The same stars that had witnessed the aurora's sinking now watched over its rediscovery. He felt strangely hollow, as if completing this mysterious task had left an emptiness where purpose had briefly flared. Not joining the celebration? Olivia asked, appearing beside him with 2 mugs of something steaming. Marcus accepted one with a grateful nod. Just trying to process everything. 3 weeks ago, I was staring at an overdue rent notice, and now you've made history, she finished, leaning against the railing beside him. The discovery will take months to properly excavate and document. The media attention alone will transform your career. The thought should have thrilled him. Instead, Marcus felt a strange melancholy. That's not why I painted it. I didn't even know what I was painting. Why do you think it came to you? Olivia asked softly. Marcus stared at the dark water. Maybe Elena's grandmother was right. Maybe the story chose me. He paused, sipping the hot chocolate Olivia had brought. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe I was just available, empty enough to receive someone else's vision. I don't think that's it at all, Olivia said, her voice gaining conviction. I've studied hundreds of artists throughout history who claim supernatural inspiration. The common thread isn't emptiness, it's sensitivity, an ability to perceive what others miss. I haven't been perceiving much lately except my own failure, Marcus admitted. Yet you kept painting. That takes courage. She turned to face him fully. The legend of the Aurora map says it would come to someone pure of intention but desperate of circumstance. I think that's exactly who you are, Marcus. Someone who never stopped believing in beauty, even when surrounded by difficulty. Her words touched something raw within him. Marcus looked away, blinking rapidly. The university where I teach has been looking for an artist in residence for our conservation program, Olivia continued casually. Someone who can document archaeological findings with artistic sensitivity. It pays well, includes studio space. Are you offering me a job? I'm suggesting a possibility. Her smile was gentle. Whatever financial benefit comes from this discovery, it won't arrive immediately. In the meantime, you have options beyond returning to that apartment. The thought of his cramped studio in New York suddenly seemed very distant. Here, under the vast California sky, with the scent of salt air and the sound of waves against the hull, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of belonging. I'd need to think about it, he said, though something inside him had already decided. Of course. Olivia turned back to the sea. For what it's worth, I think your talent was always meant for more than selling canvases to match someone's living room decor. There's something transcendent in how you see the world. They stood in comfortable silence, watching stars reflect on the dark water. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Marcus felt the tightness in his chest begin to ease. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. News of the Aurora discovery spread rapidly through academic circles, then broke into mainstream media. Marcus found himself reluctantly thrust into the spotlight alongside Olivia and her team, his painting now referred to as the Aurora map, in headlines across the country. He accepted Olivia's offer of the artist-in-residence position, temporarily at first, then with growing certainty as he settled into a small cottage near the university campus. His days developed a rhythm. Mornings spent documenting the Aurora excavation in detailed paintings and sketches, afternoons teaching a small workshop for students interested in archaeological illustration, evenings exploring the coastline that had haunted his dreams. As predicted, the legal questions surrounding the discovery were complex. The university formed an alliance with state historical preservation offices and several museums to ensure the Aurora's treasures would be properly preserved and exhibited. Marcus's finder's share was modest but substantial enough to forever banish the specter of overdue rent notices. More valuable than the financial security was the renewed sense of purpose in his work. Marcus found himself painting with an energy and clarity he'd thought lost forever. His new pieces, many inspired by the Aurora and the coast that had called to him, attracted attention from galleries that had previously rejected him. It's like you found your authentic voice, Olivia told him one evening as they walked along the beach near Black Rock Point. 6 months had passed since the discovery, and their professional collaboration had gradually evolved into something deeper, neither of them rushing to define it. Maybe I just needed something real to say, Marcus replied, watching gulls wheel against the darkening sky. You always had something to say, Olivia corrected gently. You just needed to believe someone was listening. Marcus stopped, turning to face her. The setting sun cast her in the same golden light he'd captured in his painting, and the parallel wasn't lost on him. You listened before anyone else did. I recognized something in your work, a truth beneath the surface. Her smile held warmth that had nothing to do with the fading sunlight, just like the treasure map hidden in your sunset. I'm still not sure I understand how it happened, Marcus admitted. Why those dreams came to me, How I painted a place I'd never seen with such accuracy. Does it matter? Olivia asked. Some mysteries are worth preserving. Marcus considered this as they continued walking, the tide retreating just as it had in his painting. Perhaps she was right. The explanation mattered less than what had followed. The connections formed, the purpose rediscovered, the life transformed. That night in his studio overlooking the Pacific, Marcus began a new painting. Another sunset, but this time with full awareness of what he was creating. Not a map to hidden gold, but something more valuable. A map to the heart's hidden treasures, to connection and meaning, and the quiet joy of creating something authentic. As he worked, Marcus felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with the canvas before him. The real treasure hadn't been buried beneath the waves for centuries. It had been waiting inside himself all along, needing only the right circumstances and the right people to bring it to light. The struggling artist who had once painted a sunset revealing a hidden map had found something far more precious than gold. He had found his way home,